That call came on a clear June day in 1990. Officer James Irby pulled over two men in this red Pontiac for a traffic violation. John Killingsworth was driving. Carl Wayne Bunchen was in the passenger seat. Police radios captured the chaos that followed.
The officer has been shot. We need a lifeline immediately. A white male with a pistol. He's up here on line early. I have a suspect in custody.
When Officer Irby pulled the men over, he asked the driver to get out and step to the rear of the car. While Irby was speaking with the driver, Bunchen slipped out of the passenger seat and shot him one time in the head. He then shot him twice more in the back.
302 arriving, send me about 3 to 4 more units.
Bunchen started shooting at passersby as he ran to a nearby warehouse where he was arrested. By 10 p.m.
Channel 2, KPRC TV. Now, Channel 2 News Nightcast.
Irby's murder was the lead story on every newscast in Houston.
Good evening, folks. An 18-year veteran of the Houston Police Department has been shot and killed tonight.
What did Officer Irby's murder do to the city at large?
I think Irby's murder was the last straw. People began saying, enough is enough. We got to clean this up.
Veteran KPRC reporter Phil Archer covered Irby's murder extensively.
I think that is the sentiment that a lot of Houstonians are feeling right now, that in some way all of us are diminished a bit by James Irby's death.
People in Houston kind of felt like they were under siege. And I don't think that's too far from the truth.
In 1991, Bunchen was convicted of Irby's murder and sentenced to death. When Archer interviewed him on death row, he tried to justify the shooting, claiming the officer pulled his gun first.
There was no doubt in my mind he was fixing to shoot me.
But at the end of the day, still felt it was justified.
But at the end of the day, I know it was justified.
There was absolutely no evidence ever presented that Irby was threatening his life. Irby was making a traffic stop.
Turns out Bunchen just panicked.
The sad thing about Irby's murder is it didn't have to happen. It shouldn't have happened.
Bunchen had a violent criminal record dating back to the 60s. Shortly before Irby's murder, he had been released from prison after only serving 13 months of a 15-year sentence for raping a teenager. He didn't show up at a parole halfway house as ordered, so Bunchen assumed he was a wanted man.
It exposed so much wrongs in the system.
Houston Crime Stoppers' Andy Kahn was a parole officer when Bunchen murdered Irby.
When I saw what had happened, I was like, this can't continue to happen.
Kahn said Bunchen was not a wanted man when Irby pulled over the car he was riding in, but he should have been when he failed to show up at that halfway house.
A warrant should have been put out for his arrest ASAP. Didn't happen.
I was always prepared for him to get hurt on his motorcycle. I wasn't prepared for him to be shot down in cold blood.
News stories chronicled how Irby's widow, Maura, helped bring about a reckoning in our criminal justice system.
Hopefully coming up with some legislation to encourage mandatory sentencing.
I joined that crusade.
That crusade led to much tighter supervision of parolees and the end of violent felons only serving fractions of their sentence. Kahn now hopes Bunchen's execution will finally bring the family peace.
I hope finally they get what they truly need, and that's the end of Bunchen.
Part of the reason Bunchen has been on death row this long is he successfully claimed the first jury to sentence him to death was not allowed to hear evidence of an abusive childhood. A retrial of his punishment phase took place in 2012, and as you know, that jury also sentenced him to die. Robert Arnold, KPRC 2 News.